in the Zav room with Shroud, as Sheesh tried to do yesterday, and you have problems there, then you can lose a lot of time. So consistency is key.
That's right. Theater of Pain going to be our first dungeon right now as Sheesh and Evolving get themselves ready. Both could be eliminated. Both could move on throughout our lower bracket and go up against Team Name for the chance to qualify for our global finals. Let's get into it as game number 1 gets underway.
All right, so let's take a look at the comp real quick before they go into that first pool. We see a difference here with Sheesh running that mage while they're playing Fire Mage, he has been playing, I think, in all of the dungeons so far, while Evolving, on the other hand, is not playing that magic damage at all. They're running that full melee comp with the Prod Warrior, giving them that AP shout to give the Hunter more DPS as well. And then on Sheesh's side, we see that Vengeance Demon Hunter buffing the mage's damage rather than the Windwalkers and the Rogue's damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some interesting compositional decisions here. I know that Perplexed, who have done, I think, the quickest Theater of Pain for this whole competition this weekend, they actually opted for the Priest as the healing role instead of the Paladin. So it is interesting. I was kind of expecting maybe to see either one of these teams, or perhaps both, look to grab the Priest into their composition. Though, you know, to kind of help deal with the bursting a little bit, as well as maybe give PI to perhaps Wildly on the Fire Mage or Vasi on the MM Hunter, because they can be very, very efficient with that PI use. But we also have the Sub-Rogues, which is going to be really, really nice for some priority damage and a lot of single target damage. And Tettles won't be able to be upset with the Rogues being the bottom of the meters, hopefully at certain points in these dungeons.
Yeah, for sure. And then we also see Evolving actually holding on to that Bloodlust here in comparison to Sheesh, who were just popping it straight away. Even though, if you look at the kill time, they killed the boss 1 second faster even. Evolving without the Lust, having more damage on this first pull. They did kill less trash though, as you can see. Sheesh pulled everything at the start, while Evolving only pulled one of the mobs and let the rest be there. Now, last time we saw Evolving also not use Bloodlust here, and we thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they forgot about using it. But since you can only get 2 Bloodlusts, I think, in this dungeon, if you play it really quickly, which they want to do, of course, then you would only get 2, and therefore you can delay your first Bloodlust by quite a long time. And I think Evolving is using it on the boss from this Necrotic Wing, which I forgot the name of. You surely know the name, right, Psy? Putting you in a spot here.
Koltharak, I believe. I could be wrong though. But this boss, yeah, I think they're gonna look to use the Bloodlust on the side of Evolving on Koltharak, as well as pull in some of these souls. They are killing some of them now with Varuth, which is actually a really dangerous pull on the side of Evolving, because they have that healing reduction, and then they have all of these souls. Oh, they're almost going down. I think he was up like 2% health or so, and Alex
so
still
close.
struggling to hold on. See, this is a very, very deadly pull, because healing is inefficient, and everyone in the group is going to be targeted by those souls. So that was really scary. And Sheesh now, they're having their time of it. They're having, dropping low on health. Nagura, what do you think about the chances of survival on this one?
I think the chances of survival are 100%, since both of the teams did survive, but it looked incredibly sketchy. And Evolving is now doing that same pull on their side as well, where they're going into that Fire Tormentor at the same time as pulling that Portal Guardian. So Sheesh having a little bit of a different route, not dealing with Varuth, immediately going into that area, while Evolving deals with Varuth first, having one really difficult pull there, and then going into the second pull, which is also difficult, with Arcalaf, the Fire Tormentor, and that Portal Guardian. So 2 back-to-back difficult pulls for Evolving. Looks like they did execute that perfectly though. Both Sheesh and Evolving still on 0 deaths and just blazing through that dungeon. It looks like Sheesh is ahead a little, but that's just because Evolving did already deal with that other Tormentor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Sheesh are... Well, they're further ahead in the dungeon. They do have a little bit more trash percent as well, so they could go back and deal with Varuth if they want to. But I think that they will potentially just do a 1 Tormentor run. I think that they are going to be capable of doing it if they want to. The last boss in this dungeon isn't... I don't know. I don't think it's too scary with the 3 Tormentors in terms of, compared to some of the other bosses. But then they're looking very, very low. They do have the Curse Dispel there for Splat, and as or for Wildy if they need it, but I don't think they're even going to bother wasting that global. They're just going to continue to be pressing their DPS buttons instead. And yeah, Sheesh here doing a pretty solid or consistent route. Pretty common. You can't really go too crazy in this wing because of the platforms, so you can't really do anything too crazy, too adventurous. But it's going to come down to cycling their cooldowns effectively here in this part of the dungeon and just make sure they always have something available for each pack. You can see Nezra there. He's holding onto that Zuin, that Storm Earth and Fire. So you can imagine that something big is probably going to be coming up soon, while the almost got that Combust coming up as well.
Yeah, and Evolving on the other hand doing a really big pull on their own, as well as they use that Ashen from that Holy Paladin to make sure they get this done without many of the other cooldowns, except Vusi. You can see the Hunter, of course, doing an insane amount of damage on their side. But second in damage is that Paladin because of that 4-minute Ashen Hollow cooldown that they committed here. Sheesh doing already on the next platform with the Bone Reaver, and you can see Evolving now managed to get to that platform as well. So Evolving definitely not too far behind in terms of the dungeon speed, even though they have this extra Tormentor, which it was for Ruth, right? It does give them a DPS power, which might actually be the reason why they're playing it this way, right? So they kill Varuth first, and then they immediately kill the Fire Tormentor, which is the second DPS Tormentor, giving them 2 damage powers back to back. So Evolving is going to have a little bit of a damage boost going into the rest of this dungeon until Sheesh decides to either also kill that second DPS Tormentor, or they're just not going to deal with it at all. So they get the advantage of not having to commit the time of dealing with it, but Evolving gets the advantage of having that DPS buff throughout the whole dungeon.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because right now both teams are very similar in dungeon positioning, but they have already shown slight differences in overall, theory crafting with how they want to execute this dungeon. And oh my goodness, so they're hanging on to 1% health. That was almost going to be a 5-second added to the clock on Evolving, which they desperately want to avoid. But if you are opting for getting Varith early and getting access to both of your DPS powers very early on, then as we mentioned, this is a very long dungeon, so you're going to benefit from that DPS increase for a very long time, because this is quite a long dungeon, probably in the 20-minute plus range for these teams, compared to, say, like a 15-minute Mist or something. So, yeah, this is definitely... I think ultimately this will be a nice play for Evolving. It's put them slightly behind initially, and they are just getting to Culturact now, a little bit behind Sheesh. But I think in the long run, they could start to catch up and potentially pull a lead, because they're almost, caught up on trash now. But this is where Evolving is going to look to Bloodlust. They've already popped it now before they've even entered combat, and they're going to set up now. Vossi is going to pull in these additional adds, and then they're going to just try and cleave everything down with the boss. And we'll have to see if Shella here can, channel some of that sub-rogue funnel damage into Culturac here and make up some of that difference.
Yeah, so the Bloodlust is going to put them a little bit ahead, or they're going to be able to catch up a little, but Sheesh, of course, is still in the lead, as they're also dealt with those Shackled Souls already as well. 51% trash on the board for Sheesh in comparison to the 42. It's going to ramp up a little as they're going to continue to pull those Shackled Souls into the boss, but I'm not sure if they can quite reach that 51% that Sheesh is already at. This boss, it's not tyrannical, and the affixes don't really matter here. Bursting, of course, doesn't do anything, and Storming, it can be annoying if you want to get your draw soul into the hand, but other than that, it really shouldn't be an issue. A lot of damage coming into the group, where the priest already shines as well. We've talked about Perplex bringing the Disc Priest here over the Holy Paladin, so you have that Master Spell for the bursting on trash, but you also have the Master Spell here on this boss for that double magic debuff that this boss applies, that does do a huge amount of damage to the group that cannot be dispelled by one single healer unless you have that Master Spell.
Yeah, and look at that. Evolving are just about to finish off Culturac here. Even though they pulled it slightly later than Sheesh, they managed to they're just about to kill them both pretty much at the same time. So right now, she's just having that slight advantage with the trash percent. And now this Nagura is the question of where do they go next. We know that Evolving have opted to go for the Gorchop wing, I believe now, on previous runs. And this is where Vossi has to do his best to try and snap everyone down into the Gorchop wing. So this could be touch and go here with the group as to whether they're able to do it. But they're opting for this Shroud here, so they're actually going to be shrouding partly through this. I cannot remember exactly if they tried to do this yesterday, No, right, okay, so they're just going to be sharding for a better position on doing this pull. Okay.
Yeah, so they're also pulling the bridge patrol here, which means there's so many dangerous targets to look out for. You have 2 butchers with 2 devour flesh that you want to interrupt. Then you have the horror that casts a shield that you want to interrupt if you don't want to get through that shield, extras HP. And then, most importantly, you have these sludge spewers who, if not interrupted, will cast a disease on the whole group that decreases your damage and your healing done by a lot. So that's why this is so dangerous. Actually, the Holy Calling going down here, immediately releasing. You actually release really close by, so they should be fine. But now all eyes are actually on Vusi as he's trying to do the Gore Chop pull, snapping down the rest of the group into the Gore Chop area as soon as they're done with their pull. This time, Vusi did not go down. In the yesterday, Vusi actually went down while they were pulling that trash, and then everything was delayed, and then something went wrong here, and he had to do it all again, and it cost them so much time. So if they can do this properly this time, it's gonna be so huge for them, and it must be so much pressure on Vusi at this point because he knows he messed this up twice, and if he does it again, they're gonna lose so much time. But it's looking like he's doing it. He's definitely, yeah, he's got turtle. That's what he needs to pop here, and after the turtle, the AoE is gonna come out from Gore Chop, and that's where everyone gets pulled down. There we go.
That's the scary
All right,
bit.
so they executed it perfectly. Well done.
Yeah, that is really scary when the whole team is standing up above and then they just know they're going to get pulled in and they don't know what the scene is going to look like when they come down.
Yeah.
It seems that the chain is always halfway across the map by the time they get pulled in, and then they have this, you know, AoE smash that they've got to dodge from Gore Chop, and then also they have this chain to dodge. So it's a very scary time period for the rest of the group, but they managed to do that quite comfortably. So really nice work from Evolving here, who were already on to their 3rd boss. Sheesh here actually in a different wing, so they're going to be dealing with a few of these, you know, dealing with the captain here, and I don't know which one of the mini-bosses they've got there. I can't quite see the health frames there, but they're going to be finishing this off soon, and then I think going on to Zav quite soon after. So, again, it's hard to tell in Theatre of Pain, like, exactly who can be in the lead at certain points if the teams aren't both in the exact same wing, but I think Sheesh are still a little bit ahead here, and we'll have to see if they're going to commit a skip like Evolving have done. I mean, I'm thinking right now, Nagura, if everything stays as it is, it could just come down to whichever team potentially makes a mistake. The other team could just ultimately end up winning here, because I think it is still very, very close between the two.
I definitely think this is incredibly close, even though both of those teams are choosing to take a different path, and we can't really tell exactly how close they are because of the different trash percentage and the different wings they chose to do. Of course, Evolving is a little bit behind in trash, but the mobs in that Xav wing that Sheesh already has dealt with, they give a lot of percentage. So depending on how efficient you can deal with them, they're gonna catch up quite a lot. So we're gonna see once they get, I think we're only going to see how close they are at the very end, right? Because after this, Sheesh has to go to the Gore Chop area as well, and we're still not going to be able to compare. So at this point, we're just looking how well they're executing their strategy, and at the end, we're going to see how close they are. But Sheesh doing a really good job dealing with this Xav area. You can see they're trying to cleave down the oppressive banners as much as they can, while the people in the arena try not to pull Sogodon, because we've seen that happen yesterday, where Sogodon is standing down in the arena on the left side, and unfortunately we saw a team actually pull it, and they just ended up having a full team wipe. There's no way you can deal with Xav and with that Sogodon Tormentor as well, so definitely don't want to deal with that. They need to make sure they're in the correct position whenever they get thrown into the arena to avoid getting pulled or like thrown close to that Tormentor.
Yeah, avoiding pulling Sogodon is the most critical part now for Sheesh's run. And they even had 2 banners up at one point. And now Nezra, oh no, he got knocked up by the Storming? And then he got killed by the frontal from the boss. But they are going to be able to get him rezzed up. And Eddie just tanks that smash and is still able to get Nezra up there. So they are going to be able to recover it. 5 seconds on the board now for both teams in terms of death counter. And they managed to, yeah, they're going to be able to kill Zav here without pulling Sogodon, so that was really nicely done. And I wonder if Sheesh are going to high-five Evolving as they run past them, and they leave this wing, and Evolving are entering this wing. And yeah, so we're going to have a little bit of the switching of the teams here, but that was very well done by Sheesh, because trying to avoid Sogodon there, as you were mentioning, Nagura, is very delicate, very cautious. You have to tiptoe around them. So maybe they should be like gnome models or something like that. You know, smaller model, keep themselves out of danger, less chance of pulling perhaps. No, but we've seen Evolving now. They're not going to look to skip any of the trash in this wing, which we do sometimes see teams try and do, because they can skip through and then get trash more easily in other wings of the dungeon. And they're actually just going to opt for killing it all instead. But they managed to cleave it all down quite nicely. I think did they even have the captain in that pull, or is that CC'd out of frame? I don't know if you saw or not, but
I think it should be CC'd. At least that's what Sheesh did. I'm not sure if Evolving also did that same thing, because that captain really just slows you down immensely. So you try to not deal with it or have some like crazy way to deal with it. And now we look at Sheesh. We see Wildy's already off. He's going to do the same thing that we saw Evolving just do, where he's going to be pulling Gorge up on the mage and getting everyone pulled down. So if we could get a view on how Wildy is doing the skip, that would be perfect on that Sheesh side, as well as the rest of the team is just waiting upstairs for Wildy to go and do that Gorge up pull. And they executed this pull that they just did perfectly. That was actually really crucial. One thing to note that I think I do like with the difference in composition here is that the mage is like, if you have combustion, it's like your main damage dealer on those huge pulls, right? Next to the Windwalker. So the hunter being able to leave earlier. Oh, Cauterize being proc for Wildy. He needs to. Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh my god,
This
that is
might
so
go wrong.
close. He has to block. I'm not sure if this block might have been too early. I think this block might be too early. He still has pot available, right? So you
he's
might
got a blink immediately. Oh, he got the buff.
buff.
My god.
That was so crazy. Okay, somehow Fenner managed to buff him right as he got pulled down. That was actually absolutely crazy. That was so incredibly close. If Wildy wouldn't have blocked so late, it never would have worked out, because once he got the buff, it was already done, right? Even if Wildy would have went down here, it would have been fine, because Fenner was already down. So it looked like Fenner was saving this pull, but no, it was actually Wildy being so like aware that he has to delay his block, and he risked to actually get that last hit before he got the block out, and it worked. But that was so incredibly close. If he would have blocked a millisecond earlier, they wouldn't have been able to get pulled down before he died.
Yeah, and you know, if you at home are watching this and you think, oh, I want to do this with my teams, you know, I want to try and attempt this myself, I think there are only a couple of classes that can realistically do it. I think Hunter is a really good one, Mage is a really good one, because you have things like Turtle and Ice Block respectively. But then also, I don't know why they're not sending down Splat and Wildy and like trying to juggle things between them or something, so at least if one of them dies, the other one still stays in combat for a few extra seconds, and like Splat can try an evasion tank or something. But I think definitely you
I think it's just efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Because the mage and the hunter leave during the pull, right? So they're still in combat fighting that trash while the mage and the hunter walk off. If 2 DPS leave, then they would be slower, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely risky to only have one person walk off.
And something to note here, Nagura, we're watching, I mean, on the side of Evolving Kia, they're having a few little issues. Sheller there, proccing his cheat death, almost dying, but oh, and Aicha's gonna go down, but Zav is almost dead, and they're actually tied up on percent trash with Sheesh, more or less. I think Sheesh.
Oh no, are they pulling Sagadon? They pulled it, I think. They pulled Sagadon.
They have, but I think they could just die, which is gonna add to that counter.
Yeah, but it's extra count, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thankfully it was only Sheller that was in combat, so he went down. They're up to 3 deaths now, so 10 seconds difference. Sheesh also has to deal with some trash here as well to get that 100%. Well, I believe somebody went up to trigger the boss, which I believe is Wildy. Yeah, you can not see Wildy with the group because he went up and actually triggered the event. And Evolving already waiting upstairs for the event to trigger as they deal with this last trash that they have to pull into the boss. This is going to be so incredibly close. Sheesh does not have Bloodlust available for this last boss, and they have to deal with 3 Tormentor debuffs, while Evolving only has to deal with 2 debuffs, and they have the last as well. So this is going to be really close. It's going to come down to the wire, especially because those 10 seconds extra penalty on Evolving's board might just matter.
Yeah, it absolutely will. I think it will come down to that last, 10, 15 seconds or so between these two teams. So those deaths could really count there just with that accidental pull of Sognon. But apart from that, I think both of these teams' runs have been really clean and efficient. And Sheesh now, I mean, Eddie's going to be just getting absolutely trucked by this boss. He's not on that warrior that can actually make use of that spell reflect to try and redirect some of the boss damage here, at least avoid taking that. And so Andy's really going to have his work cut out for him. Thanner as well, having to desperately heal Andy through this boss. But Mordretha here dropping down to 64% on the side of Sheesh. Evolving here, only 20% left on Mordretha. I think Evolving are actually going to be able to do it, even with this additional 10 seconds. They've got all their trash percent. They managed to... Oh no, Aisha goes down again, so add another 5 seconds to the timer.
Alex is taking so much damage with the physical damage increase on him, with the healer that they're not getting the battle rest off because they need to use the engineer rest.
6%.
Alex is just dropping so low, he strikes around. This beam actually is saving his life here, this Dark Devastation, because he's not casting. There we go! Evolving kills the boss. 10 seconds to the board for Sheesh. 15 seconds actually because of that extra death.
Oh my
I don't
goodness.
think they're going to be able to make it, but it's so close. They have 6 more seconds. They're not going to make it. Evolving actually pulling out the win here against Sheesh. Wow. What a performance.
What a game. I mean, we've been looking at, Theater being one of those longer dungeons through and through, and having an evolving 2020 run while Perplexed had a 2010 run previously. Sheesh is going to have like a 2050 or something like that. These teams can just be so insanely close. But Evolving are going to be taking that win there, Dratnos.
It was never in any doubt, of course. Evolving had it all along, all in the bag. Not any scary moments at all at the end there when the healer died.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's always good when there's no concerns or conflicts.
Yeah, nice smooth run, a nice clean path through the dungeon, and look at the damage meters at the end here. 20 minutes, 17 seconds, our final time. And wow, some of these players are just putting out an absurd amount of DPS on these specs. In particular, Scheller, we talked about him on that Warlock, but look at him on the Rogue too, also doing just a huge amount of overall damage on a class that normally, like if you look up on Sheesh's side, right, normally the Rogue is a little bit lower on the overall, and it's just kind of there contributing more in the utility and the priority damage. But Shella, even on that Rogue, is doing a huge amount of damage for that class.
That's right. This dungeon has no shortage of, need for utility, for just heroic plays through and through Dratnos, and also just a number of things that can go wrong for unfortunate players here. Let's go through some of them here.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the moments of this dungeon that were most important. Of course, we've got the gore chop angle here of when Vosi went down to snap. It's actually kind of tough on the hunter. You have to really economically use your turtle, and then once your group is down, you get to just feign, and it's nice and easy. There was a brutal combo, the storming into the boss, just smashing him down, dunked onto the floor. Really brutal when you have that banner out as well. You can't dodge the storming, and then you're knocked up and instantly killed. Wildy here, truly heroic play as well. Instantly pops his Cauterize from taking an auto while trying to set up that ring. Has to use an early ice block here, and the thing that saves this pull ends up being the pod tender, actually. Once the whole rest of the group is down, Wildy actually goes into that pod tender, and you know what? It's not a big deal, right? So we use ice block, Cauterize, and pod tender to make this pull happen. And there you can see getting potted. Gets the bop right as he's getting potted, almost saved from needing it. You can see getting kind of dragged around while in that pod, but it is still enough. As soon as the rest of the group is down there, Wildy's job was done. So really well done by both teams. The difference in whose job it is to go and get Sludge Fist. It's not easy, no matter whether you're a mage or a hunter, if you're assigned that responsibility.
That's right. And, that Nezro death, you ever played like wiffle ball as like a kid or something like that? You just like toss up the ball to yourself and just smack it out of the park. That was a Zav in a nutshell. Absolutely love to be able to see it. And Theater has no shortage whatsoever, Sai, of exciting games.
Yeah, I mean, that was as close as it's going to get, right? That was fantastic to witness. And, you know, we said it's a bit of a longer dungeon. It was going on to that 20-minute mark. And these teams were both really, really consistent to the point where at the end of that run, I was like, I don't really know what happened here for Sheesh to even lose this game. Because it's not like they made any major mistakes. They were ahead for quite a good portion of the dungeon. Maybe it did come down to that Varuth additional damage buff, you know? So it was really, really close.
That's right, and you know it's also going to start setting our sights here in Agura on game number 2, the other side with, of course, we love to talk about it, our live affixes for this week.
Yeah, so we have Tyrannical, Inspiring, Quaking. We haven't seen either of those teams actually do the other side on this tournament. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? A bad thing because that means they probably didn't have the other side in any of their other series, meaning that they maybe didn't focus on it too much, right? Because if they have to play other dungeons a lot more in their path, then they're going to be practicing those more. Or it could also just mean that maybe one of the teams has like a really good strategy that they didn't have to show yet, that the other team maybe doesn't know about, and they're just gonna, blow our minds with some crazy strat in the other side.
That's right. I mean, maybe. I mean, we've been looking at how well these teams have been able to, start setting up some of the crazy, gigantic pulls, particularly in Ardenweald. And, we mentioned it previously, Dratnos, because there's no more Prideful we have to worry about. You could start just slamming tons and tons of mobs into the boss fight.
Yeah, you really do get the opportunity to do these things without the 20% breakpoints being so vital. Last time around when we were in here with Prideful season, there were these kind of crucial moments where it's like, okay, we're getting a Pride here, we're skipping this one, we're dealing with this one, and that was sort of what the dungeon was built around. Whereas now, without that affix being involved, it is much more about just how few pulls can we do these wings in, right? Can we pull 30% of our mob count in one gigantic pull in the Ardenweald wing? And the answer is probably yeah. We're probably going to see some of that out of these teams. But like Nagura mentioned, we haven't seen either of these teams in this dungeon yet, so there may be some even cooler strats that we have yet to see.
That's right. I mean, we've already seen a couple teams skipping some of the masks already, going absolutely crazy as well, Sai, with skipping as many Tormentors as they possibly can. So what do you think you're most looking forward to in this one?
Well, we saw in the Great Push that Sheesh were the kings of the other side, achieving the highest level dungeon in the other side. So I imagine that they're probably going to be feeling pretty confident about this one. So I'd like to see what they try and do. I'd love to see even just a one Tormentor run and see either of these teams being able to pull that off. And yeah, just in general, like Dratna said, I just want to kind of see them pull big and see what they can chain into bosses and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's always interesting looking at some of these teams who've come in from the Great Push, who've been able to stake their name, for example, Nagura, on doing extremely high keys, and now they're also in MDI. We've been seeing a ton of participation just across the board for this tournament this season.
Yeah, and I mean, Sheesh specifically is that one team that participated in the Great Push tournament, and they were the only ones that managed to do this key that they're doing now, the other side. I think it was at 25, or was it at 26?
I think it was at 26, yeah.
I think it was 26.
Yeah, so they were the only ones who got the 26 done, which, not sure if that is going to translate well into the speed running that they have to do here, but it definitely means that Sheesh knows a lot about the other side, right? They know this dungeon, they've practiced this a lot, they know how to do it on 26 even, so they must know a strategy on how to do a 21 really fast.
I mean, they're going to need to right now. I mean, Sheesh facing elimination as we speak, going down one, and they're supposed to be the higher seed. When we talk about it and looking at which team might be favored, which team might, be going the distance and going up against team name a little bit later on. There was the talk about having, maybe a Sheesh team name rematch, but Evolving, they're not going down without a fight on this one, Dratnos.
Yeah, this is going to be very, very, very important for both of these teams, right? It's not a win and in. Winning here does not guarantee you a slot in the Global Finals, but lose and you are out. So that is very, very front and center in the minds here of Sheesh, right? They know that they need to win both of these next two games to prevent that from happening.
Yep, and both of the teams are now ready as Sheesh and Evolving are prepared to step into the other side and hopefully possibly determine who moves on throughout this bracket and who goes home.
Yeah, so let's take a look at their comms. There we go. We see the Dastro Warlock. No, it's actually Affliction, sorry. It's an Affliction Warlock coming out of Shella. We did see a Warlock before, but it was Dastro. So this might be the first time that we see an Affliction here. It's definitely interesting, though. We also see the Frost Mage for the first time coming out of Sheesh. They had played Fire Mage this whole time up until the other side. So we see the Shadow Priest, the Frost Mage for Sheesh, while we see the Affliction Warlock and Frost Mage and Windwalker as well. So difference between Rogue and Windwalker too.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see the differences in those compositions reveal themselves as we get further on into this dungeon. But starting us off, Sheesh and Evolving, they've both gone for a very similar pull. I think maybe even exactly the same here, and they're both just going to be aiming it down almost in exactly the same amount of time, and then moving on into Ardenweald as we would expect. And I mean, I guess going back into the composition for these teams, what do you think about the Frost Mage? Because there are a lot of inspiring mobs in this dungeon, so it's not like that you're going to be able to make a good advantage of the slowing of the Frost Mage. So is it just in terms of more consistent damage compared to the Fire Mage? Do they want a more even spread of things dying? I mean, it's not like it's bolstering or anything like that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Frost Mage, interestingly enough, here in this Ardenweald area, you would think, oh, Fire Mage must be the best, right? Because they have this like huge AoE. And I think specifically for these huge pulls, I think that Fire Mage would be better. But because it's not just Ardenweald, right? There's also other pulls that they have to do. And because Inspiring is causing so many issues, you need to make sure that those Inspiring mobs die fast. Because you don't want to not pull them. You don't want to slow down your pulls. You don't want to like CC the Inspired mob and pull everything else and then pull Inspired, right? Like that just slows you down so much. So what those teams decide to do is they just pull the Inspiring mobs together with their like huge pull, but then they focus them down super quickly to make sure they can interrupt the other mobs. We're gonna see that specifically in that Hakar area later, where you have all of these priests and these hoodoo hexers who just heal all of the mobs around them if they don't get the Inspired mob down. So that's something we're going to see Evolving, unfortunately, as 2 deaths on their side, as both their Windwalker and their Mage is going down here. And one is this big pulls, and it's so crucial because this pull is an insane one, as you can see. This might be just causing so many issues for Evolving because there's a bunch of Inspired mobs on top of this pull, and they don't have their Mage here. You can see they got the Battle Rest up on their Windwalker, but they don't have the Mage, which does so much damage on these AoE pulls. So this is going to take them a lot longer to finish off. And I'm not sure if Alex can survive this on the Demon Hunter. He's already fighting, and they're not even low. They're still on 50% HP. So this is going to take them a long time to finish off, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't think that they can commit a full team wipe here and just say, look, let's restart and go again. They've committed now. They've got to keep going. Maybe they commit a Bloodlust just to, you know, try and fix the situation and not make it get any worse. But no, I think they're actually going to be able to stabilize quite comfortably there. But Sheesh, they managed to do this pull without any deaths on the board. Everyone's looking fairly healthy. Wildie's completely out of mana. So I didn't know Frost Mages can run out of mana, but apparently that's a thing.
It's a spelling, I think.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, he's the only Dispel in the group, so I think he's just been helping out with those duties as they've been gathering up all these mobs, and this is where the really nice slow's coming in here. And yeah, I mean, going back to kind of these compositions a little bit as well, I was wondering about whether, you know, I'm thinking Splat's going to be really efficient in funnel damage and trying to do a lot of single target prio, especially since it's a tyrannical setting. They want to try and kill these inspiring mobs like this Blade Beak right here as quickly as possible, so that then they can start managing the rest of the mobs with regular CC. So Splat's going to do a really good job there. I thought maybe Shella would be able to do a lot of single target damage for the group, because we know the Frost Mage on Vasi and Soda are going to be able to do a lot of AoE damage. But Shella's actually fully AoE'd out as well. He's got the Sow the Seeds talent, as well as the Soul Rot legendary. So Shella's going to be fully committed to the AoE as well. So this is interesting. I think Sheesh are going to have a nice, will be able to pull away a little bit in the single target and the inspired mobs, make things easier, but they'll probably struggle a little bit more in the AoE. So interesting composition changes.
Look at the amount of damage Fenner is doing in his Holy Paladin as he just put down the Ashen. And he might have gotten PI as well by that Shadow Freeze, possibly. If you look at the amount of damage he's doing on this big pool, both of the teams actually held on to their Bloodlust for this pool because it is pretty dangerous having Zayaxa and basically half the Arden Wield area on top when a bunch of them are even inspired. Really dangerous. That's why they're holding on to that lust. And you can see Evolving doing the same or a very similar pull on their side as well. But they didn't actually have that Ashen. It was Shelle who was just absolutely blasting the AoE. You can see he was going up to, I think, 100k DPS, just throwing in those seeds. One thing to note about the seeds as well is that they also do boss damage. It's not obviously not going to be purely single target damage, but he's probably still doing a lot of or a decent amount of single target DPS, while the rest of his team is focusing purely on single target, with Shelle just completely blasting the AoE in.
Yeah, really good efficiency between the team there to micromanage who's going to be doing what job and making sure that they're not just competing for #1 on the DPS meter, but doing really inefficient damage. And Shell is definitely one of those guys where if you steal his damage, he will yell at you and he will say, hey, stop pressing your buttons. This is my damage. So Shell has probably been doing that a little bit in this run so far, and probably over the course of this weekend saying, stop stealing my numbers. These are mine. But yeah, Sheesh here just managed to finish off Zayaxa a little bit quicker, and now they're going to be moving on through the dungeon. And now I'm interested to see what they're going to be doing next. But yeah, a little bit faster in that pull, because obviously they didn't have the issues that Evolving had. And speaking of issues on Evolving side, Aicha goes down, so they are not going to have a battle res available because they've already used it earlier in the dungeon. Zayax has only got 7% health left. Soda's desperate to just hang on there, 20% health. He's got the debuff from the lightning here, so he needs to make sure he doesn't get hit, but he did. Oh,
yeah, so they're gonna be able to finish this off, but unfortunately just another time loss for them. It looked like they almost were able to, like, they almost caught up to Sheesh, right? You saw them being on the same pool, on the same boss, and it looked like they were only like 20%, 30% boss HP behind, which is a lot on Tyrannical, but it is doable still. Fenner just falling off. You can see him laugh on the camera there. Okay, so they have to get Fenner back to the group, unfortunately. But yeah, Evolving, having those 4 deaths on the board, those 20 seconds, actually it's going to be a 15 seconds different now. Fenner has to die again. So it looked like Napster was trying to grip Fenner back to the group, but he didn't manage because he pulled the Enraged Spirit mid-grip. So this is actually a problem now as they're in combat. I'm not sure if they are in combat with the Spirit or if the masks are just still there. Looks like they're not in combat, okay. But they need Fenner to get back to the group, otherwise they're going to be losing so much. Yeah, he's just waiting. Going in. He's like, I don't need my healer. We cannot wait. He's just going in. This is really risky though. But there we go. Fenner is now back at the group. So they should be, they are going to be fine. But it's good to see that Fenner still has a smile on his face. So the spirits are still high, even though that mistake obviously is like a silly one. And you don't want to make that, of course.
Yeah, and it has allowed Evolving to catch back up, though, because even though they're slightly behind on Trash and they've still got this pull to finish off here, they're actually going to be pulling in this Enraged Spirit and doing the rest of the Trash. So they're pretty much in a very similar point in the dungeon. So thank you to Thena for giving Evolving a chance to catch back up here. He's just giving them an edge to get back into this competition because they were slightly behind, but they clean up that pull very, very comfortably there. Committing the Ashen Hallow, I think, probably helped.
Yeah, I think the Ashen always helps for everything. For damage, for healing, for everything. So Sheesh is now stealthing through this Mechagon area, making sure... they're probably going to do one of those pulls here, like the lubricators with the oils. That is something we've seen a lot of the MDI teams do before. And so far, we haven't really seen anything like incredibly special out of Sheesh and Evolving when it comes to struts that we haven't seen before. Evolving decides to not skip this initial part here. They are dealing with these headlets, clients, and the ARF. So either Sheesh is actually going to be skipping this on the way back as well, or they deal with this trash once they're done with the boss. That's also something we've seen from teams, because the Shroud is probably not going to be up because Shroud is a really long cooldown, 6 minutes, I believe. So they're not going to have it available once the boss is done. So they either have to somehow like invis pot it, or they have to def skip if they don't want to deal with this, or they just decided to skip it for cooldown timings, right? Maybe they just said, you know what, we want to do this trash after, once the Ashen Hallow comes back up, or once like another cooldown becomes available.
Yeah, a lot of teams we've been talking this weekend about it have been pulling around Ashen Hallow timing, and we've seen, I can't remember which team it was, but they came into the Mana Storm fight and they popped the Ashen Hallow pretty much immediately as well. So I think this is just a really efficient Ashen Hallow timing and just allows them to get more overall uses in the key in general. So maybe that's just what's happening here. But yeah, definitely a very good point in terms of we've not really seen anything too crazy new from either of these teams here. And I wonder how much that comes down to the fact that they both had to do 5 other dungeons in this tournament already. So how much have they just had to say, hey, let's just copy what the other teams are doing for the other side. We don't have time to innovate. We're just going to see what they do and do that. And so far, it looks like that's what kind of Sheesh and Evolving are looking to do here. And now Evolving actually ahead on trash percent, so they did manage to do an extra little bit in this area of the dungeon. And they're going to be making use of the Warlock Gateway to just jump ahead. They're not going to be wasting any time waiting for that RP. Is it RP? It's not really RP, is it? But it's kind of time gated, I think.
Yeah.
With the I don't know what you'd call
we've
it.
Seen people already fall off there, right? In the MDI even, because
Yeah.
people try to get past this quickly. They don't want to wait, of course, and then they just get caught off guard and fall off. But not for Evolving, as they use that gateway. The gateway also can be tricky though, because even if you gate, you still can get hit mid-air. So you need to make sure that you don't use it in the wrong moment. So that's something that Shala probably told his team already, and they are aware of that. As they're now also on Millhouse and Maleficent, they're behind, of course. It is a trinical fight, so this fight takes really long. So they might be behind, I would say, like 30 seconds, maybe a bit more even. They do have a little bit extra trash though, right? They have this extra trash from the pool that we just saw that I talked about earlier. So that is something she somehow has to make up for after this. So I'd still say this is pretty close between them two, with Sheesh having like a slight advantage.
Yeah, Evolving there, as you're mentioning, 69% trash, and they have 4 deaths on the board with a 20-second timer. So that's 69, 420 there on the side of Evolving, real nice. And yeah, they're a little bit behind here on the Mana Storms. As you can see, there's 2 boss health bars that they have to be accounting for, right? We can see Sheesh have gotten Millhouse taken care of. They've just got to finish off Maleficent here, and then they're going to be moving on. As you mentioned earlier, Nagura, we're going to see what they're going to do with this trash here. Whether they're going to pull it, whether they're going to commit an invis skip, maybe Andy's going to do a pull away and then be able to use his Night Elf Shadow Meld, but I think they are just going to be going for the kill here. And now they've not really got too many offensive cooldowns. I think Splat's got something up. Wildy's just popped some cooldowns there as well. So they're going to be able to comfortably deal with this. They've got something left in the tank here. And man, Thena has not stopped smiling this whole time. Like, they are really having a good time. You wouldn't think that Sheesh are 0-1 down against Evolving here, because they seem to be having a really good time, which is nice to see from Sheesh.
Yeah, that's definitely awesome. And you can see, once they're done with this trash, we're gonna see exactly how far ahead Sheesh is going to be, because Evolving is still fighting Millhouse. They're still gonna have to kill Maleficent afterwards. So once this trash is done, we're gonna see a approximate difference as soon as Evolving kills that boss. So yeah, if you look at the timer, it's at 13:35. We'll see how long Evolving needs to finish off this boss. Sheesh now obviously heading to that last wing, the Hakar wing, that they still have to do. They have to deal with some trash there as well, and they probably are committing that Bloodlust for Hakar that is coming up in like 40 seconds.
Yeah, I think Hakar, even after the nerfs to that boss, it's still very, very scary, and those ads can just build up, and if they're not taken care of, and if the boss fight goes on too long, you run out of defensive cooldowns to reduce that blood barrier, you run out of offensive cooldowns to deal with the ads and the boss itself, and you end up just in this cycle where the boss just keeps living, and just gets these stronger and stronger barriers every time. So it's a very scary boss. I think definitely worth committing Bloodlust to, because you're only going to get 2 total Bloodlusts in this dungeon based on the pace that these teams are going at. And they're actually going to be dealing with the Enraged Spirit here just on its own. I don't know how like super efficient that is, but I guess they want to save some cooldowns here for this pull that they're going to do now on the side of Sheesh. With Arcalath into the Death Speaker trash pack here, they've got one Inspiring Mob, which you're going to see Thana just go over and hodge there. Really nicely done. And then they're actually just going to be able to dispatch of everything else and deal with this Inspired Raptor very, very quickly. Those Black gets knocked back, and he manages to Shadow Step backwards. That's one for the montage. I think he's just working up that montage reel for himself. But there's a lot of damage going out here on the side of Sheesh.
I saw someone flying as well for evolving, but I think it was a pet or like some sort of image. Either way, they are fine, as they did skip their Enraged Spirits on evolving side. So they skipped the Spirit with the Gateway and then went into the same pool that Sheesh is doing right now. So they are in the same pool. If evolving can get that percentage that they were missing from that Spirit somewhere else, meaning they can save that extra pool, then they're not that far behind, actually. But we'll see if they manage to actually skip that, because those Enraged Spirits, they can be incredibly tricky because they're patrolling around. So while you're fighting the last boss, it can be really, like you might be pulling it while you get sent to a platform, which is incredibly dangerous and will probably just cause a full team wipe if that happens.
Yeah, it's a very delicate maneuver to avoid that Enraged Spirit. And now you're going to see Sheesh here setting up a little bit for this massive pull that they're going to be doing. They've got 2 Inspired Mobs that they've got to be careful of here. They're going to pull everything in, look to use the Urn that's going to stun every mob in that radius. And now it's game on. Splat has to kill these Inspired Mobs immediately, and they don't want any of those devoted mobs to actually transition into the bats, because they put down a nasty AoE damage effect, and then also they just do a lot of damage themselves, which
so
you can see on the
has,
side of Evolving.
Yeah, Evolving has 2 Sons of Akar. It looked like the priest was too close, but I'm actually not completely sure if they did this on purpose, because if you have to pull the priest away, that's going to be a damage loss, right? So maybe they said, you know what, we're just going to put the priest closer. Also, I might be wrong here, but I think if they turn into the Suns, then they give percentage, and they don't give percent when they are not turned.
Well, they've just let these Suns transform again, and then
I think they want the percentage.
Lantern.
I actually think they want the percentage here, which might be incredibly smart if that allows them to skip this Enraged Spirit that I talked about. They're still behind though, but if that is their strategy, then I think that is actually incredibly smart, if that somehow saves them 1 extra pull.
Yeah, because remember, they've still got the initial trash pack at the beginning of the dungeon that they will do with Muzala at some point. So they still have that they can pull in for that last little bit of trash here. But this pull for Evolving is going on quite a long time. Sheesh, on the other hand, they're actually onto Hakar, and it's already down to 50% health. They committed the Bloodlust, as we mentioned. It actually goes down again. It's an extra 5 seconds on the timer. Did he die to... He didn't die to a spirit then, did he?
I think he did. They did get a battle rest immediately. That's their last battle rest, so they cannot have any more deaths from now on, as they're also pulling a card. They are committing their bloodlust as well. So they are ready to blast this boss, but Sheesh, they're already down to 26%. And this is Tyrannical Hakar. It takes quite a while, even with that committed bloodlust. So Sheesh definitely in the lead, as they also have the 15 seconds advantage from the extra death penalties that Evolving had on their side. So all eyes on Sheesh now, as they do have to deal with 2% extra trash in comparison to Evolving. But I believe that's going to be made up by all of that trash from that entrance that you just talked about, right? The trash that they didn't do at the very start of the dungeon. They're going to be dealing with that while fighting the boss, and while having that haste buff from the intermission phase.
Yeah, so it's all to play for here for Sheesh. If they can just continue at this pace, make no major mistakes here, then they could be going into evening up this game, or evening up this series between themselves and Evolving here, and we could potentially be going to Game 3, which would be fantastic to see, because again, I think it would be our third game of the weekend, and then also it would just be really great to see another match between these two teams, because it has been a fantastic series so far. They've been very, very close in that Theater of Pain. They're still very, very close in the other side, and it just goes to show how amazing that is, that Sheesh at the 6th seed, and I think Evolving at the 12th, And yet, these two teams look very evenly matched in the series so far. As Evolving are going to finish off Hakar there, and then scramble to get onto Muzala as quick as possible. Sheesh already starting to pull this Dagura.
Yeah, all eyes on Sheesh as they have to get this boss done without any mistakes. Otherwise, Evolving is going to be right behind them and are ready to take this if Sheesh doesn't. So they have 2 Tormented debuffs, as you can see. They have the 50% slow, and they also have the 50% physical damage increase, which means that that boss is going to be doing a lot of damage to Andy if not properly mitigated. But I have no doubt that Andy can do that. Another thing to notice that Quaking does not do physical damage, right? It does magic damage if you hit other people, so that's not something you have to worry about. I mean, you don't want to hit other people no matter what you do, but it doesn't get more dangerous because of that extra buff. And then we're gonna have the intermission phase. We already saw one DPS not being able to kill their image fast enough, but hopefully that's not gonna be the case for Sheesh as their intermission phase starts soon.
Yeah, and now we're going to see them all move over to their respective corners of the map. And now it's game on for them to kill these totems quickly because, A, they want to make sure that they're beating Evolving here, but also they're on track to get the fastest the other side we've seen so far in the tournament, which would just be a really good confidence boost and just show that Sheesh are here to win this thing. So yeah, we're going to see these Visages now hopefully going down very, very quickly, and then they're going to use that haste buff on Muzala to just blast down that last couple of percent. But like we've been saying, Naguri, you mentioned Hakar being on Tyrannical, Muzala Tyrannical, they're going to have quite a few percent left to go on Muzala. It's a very high health boss, and you think you get down to that last like 15%, you think the fight's almost over, but it could be an extra minute or so that they're going to be battling this guy. And here they are with that last little bit of percent here on the side of Sheesh.
Yeah, and this trash is so dangerous because you have that physical damage increase, right, on Andy. So you get that extra damage. You also have the Inspired map here, so you cannot really help out with interrupts or with CCs. So that's why Andy was saving his cooldowns for this after intermission trash plus boss pull, and it looks like he's fine. He's also dodging that frontal that unfortunately was the front frontal first instead of left or right, which caused Andy having to walk backwards with that 50% slow on him. He did manage to do so, and it looks like they didn't manage to kill one of the totems, right? Otherwise the boss would not be on 34%. I didn't actually look at the buffs that they had, but they definitely missed a totem. Otherwise the boss would be a lot lower. And this is the chance for Evolving to actually come back into this. If they manage to kill the Visages, they might be able to finish the boss first, as Sheesh just needs to kill a 4th Visage. Whichever one they didn't manage to kill, they're walking there after this. So after this, they're gonna get their 2nd intermission, but Evolving is now done with theirs.
Yeah, and even if they all go to that platform on the side of Sheesh and manage to deal with that Visage, they still have to wait for the allotted RP time. Even if you kill it really quick, you still have to wait for that full 30 seconds or so that I believe it is. So this is a little bit of a misplay here by Sheesh. I don't know what happened where maybe the DPS players were being a little bit greedy, not committing too much to deal with the Visage because they wanted to make sure they had cooldowns for that trash pack on the platform when they remat Muzala. But now on Evolving, Aicha goes down again, so another 5 seconds on the death timer, and I don't think they were able to do two of their totems.
This might be an intended strategy. Sometimes on live service you go for a 2 and 2 strat where you kill 2 and then 2 more, but I'm not sure that's a strat you want to go for in the MDI. But I almost cannot believe that 2 of their players didn't manage to kill their Visage. Vusi now going down too. That means they're not going to be able to get Vusi back up. So all eyes back on Sheesh. It's going to be their game to win as they now got back from the 2nd intermission phase, finishing off that 4th totem that they were still missing. And now they just have to get through this 1 extra percent of Muzala until they also have to do 2% trash. So Wildy is going back looking for that extra trash that they're still missing. But yeah, not clean by either of those teams. But it looks like we're going into the game 3 as they're now just finding this extra percent. In fact, they even have to deal with this dental drill. I'm not sure if this was even... Is this their intended strat to actually go for the dental drill at the very end? Because that seems very inefficient.
I don't think that's intended.
Yeah, I don't think so either. They must have missed something. But
you know
thankfully for them, Evolving has that full team wipe though.
Yeah, I bet that they didn't pull the last 2 mobs at the top of the stairs at the beginning of the dungeon, because that's like, I think, roughly 2% and would have completed their trash percent, but ultimately Sheesh are gonna do it. They managed to hit 100% trash, and that's gonna take it.
Well, that one wasn't clean, but they did get through it, and Sheesh is going to be tying up the series 1-1 right now. And man, DOS just finds so many ways to be able to sink people's ships here, Dranos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
one. If you're Sheesh, you got to be really, really delighted that you were able to win with so much going wrong for you right towards the end of the dungeon. So definitely a sigh of relief from them as we now go to the most vital game 3 that either of these teams has played so far in this tournament. The loser here is going to be out, and the winner will get to fight for that spot in the global finals against Team Name in our next series. So nothing can be more important. Here's a look at the damage meters we had from that dungeon. Wow. Look at some of the numbers you're seeing here, especially Wildy. You know, we saw him on fire almost all this tournament, swapping over to Frost for this dungeon. And certainly we can tell it wasn't a case of, oh, he was only playing fire because he didn't know Frost. Oh, no, he knows how to play Frost as well.
And look at Andy's damage on the Vengeance Demon Hunter. 10k DPS. Wow.
Not bad.
Absolutely nuts.
Wait,
And
third place. Yeah, he beat his rogue.
that poor rogue. I mean, let's talk about some of those pulls as well, Dranos, because you know the rogue's doing the good work. All right, he's doing the good work for the team.
Yeah, that is the important work, the ethical damage. Here's where we started seeing things go wrong a little bit for Evolving. You can see 2 deaths as they were gathering this Ardenweald pull. They had 1 B-res, but the other person had to just walk back, and so they were using 4 players against that pull for a while. They did claw a little bit of time back at the start of this boss fight with just that incredible Affliction, Frost Mage, Vengeance, Demon Hunter damage, doing a huge amount at the start of the boss fight. But then they were able to have all of that sort of be taken away from them towards the end of this fight, as they again had players starting to go down, starting to lose players with the time kind of just going right away there. So out of the Ardenweald wing, they were already a little bit behind. Then the middle part of the dungeon, things were pretty calm. Things were pretty, both teams were kind of doing their pulls. We did have a little bit of a funny sort of moment coming out, of course, from Thanner over on Team Sheesh, who was trying to get past this mob, trying to get the life grip past, but unfortunately pulled the mob as he was gripped through, so ends up jumping off here. This is intentional jumping off after getting in combat. It was a good thought, though. I think what you need to do is like jump off outside and then get grip back on, right? You're kind of not doing a straight line, but getting a triangle pull. And then here was Nezro against one of these images for Sheesh, does commit the Void Eruption, but actually wasn't able to kill that Visage and hit the totem in time. You could see the Visage was dying like right at the very end of the cast there, but you need to click the totem as well, and he didn't have enough time to do that. Now, the Evolving Moizala was even more scuffed, but that could have absolutely cost the run for Sheesh against several of the other times that have been put up by some other teams in our tournament here.
Yeah, and we've talked about it in the past, or just how well and how important it is for teams to be able to keep it close. I mean, we were just looking, for example, Nagura at Perplexed and Team Name going at it, where they were always staying within, overtaking their opponent if they made the slightest mistake. And that was the thing for the side of Evolving, is they just weren't getting to that point they could overtake Sheesh in this dungeon. And, Sheesh made plenty of mistakes of their own here.
Yeah, and it's going into this third game. It's going to be the Mists. And one thing that is worrying me a little bit for Sheesh here is that they haven't played this dungeon at all yet, which might mean that they didn't have it a lot in their series before. And it's also not going to be in the lower final or in the upper final, in the last final at all. So that means that seeing that dungeon for the first time for Sheesh might possibly mean that they didn't actually practice it as much. While on the other hand, Evolving, we've already seen them do this dungeon twice. They lost against Perplexed, that had the fastest run of the tournament on Perplexed side. And then we saw them won against Sonics with a 17-11 time. So at that point, I mean, I would give it to Evolving just because they probably have practiced this dungeon more, but then Sheesh, they are the favorites because they are the higher seed. So I think this is going to be incredibly close and super exciting to watch for sure.
Yeah, and when we're looking at, which of these teams is going to be moving on, this is also kind of a perfect dungeon side to see, okay, well, how well is your time, your best time at this point on day 3 when you've seen a bunch of other teams run through it and you've run through it a bunch yourself? How well can your time start matching up against the best in the business?
Yeah, because at this point now, this is the point in the competition where the times between the teams get really, really close. We see one small little mistake can be the difference between the team winning or losing here, as we've seen two very close runs between Sheesh and Evolving so far. And then now we're going into this miss. Like Nagura said, we haven't seen it from Sheesh yet. We've seen it very cleanly done from Evolving. So, I don't know. This is real touch and go right now. And yeah, I'm just hoping that Sheesh can keep that good that good humor with them. Banner smiling all the way through those runs. I think hopefully if they can kind of just keep it together mentally, then I think Sheesh could do really well here. But yeah, it could be touch or go.
Yeah, and like I said, these teams are going to be getting ready. This is also the first time Dratnos has been gone to the Game 3 this weekend, and, you know, what better of a matchup for it to be than winner moving on to the lower finals and then being a game away from qualifying.
Yeah, Sheesh, Evolving, and Team Name are all so close together from what we've seen from them so far that it really does just highlight that level that the second slot to Global Finals out of this group is going to be contested at, right? It is going to be intense. And I mean, it's got to feel so good as Team Name to know that you're up against the winner of this series, right? Like, obviously, both of these teams will be really scary if you're Team Name, but at least this series going to 3 games, you're just there sitting back, doing your practice, just glad that these guys are going through the ringer right now.
That's right. Perplex got the hyperbolic time chamber ready, just waiting for that last matchup of the day to see who is going to be meeting up with them. And it's also that sigh of relief as well, no pun intended there, of just saying, hey, you know, we've already made our qualification. We already, you know, are able to further prepare. And a lot of it is also going to be kind of interesting as well, Nagura, because some of the teams in Group B, Group C, like Echo, they don't really know what they need to be practicing for. So I'm sure, like, players on Echo, for example, are just practicing some of the dungeons they're seeing here and saying, okay, well, how well do we match up against Perplexed and some of these other guys?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think the format itself, the format change is really good for the teams because they don't actually have to play every weekend and qualify for each tournament specifically. And then they also can, as you said, just sit here and watch the other teams perform. Of course, they're not going to be having the same level of keys and the same affixes, so they can't necessarily copy strategies, but they can copy smaller things here and there, which might be really helpful. For example, we've just seen Evolving let those mobs turn into Sons of a Car to be able to get extra percentage, so they managed to skip an Enraged Spirit, which is actually a really cool strategy. They ended up still losing that dungeon, but I do think that might be something that we see in the future again from other teams, just because that is gonna make up a lot of time if you don't have to deal with that extra Enraged Spirit.
Yeah, and hopefully next time they won't actually turn into Sons of a Car and start pumping huge damage on everybody too. I think we had seen, I want to say that we had seen Sheesh in the past, or maybe it was Team Name, who had actually done a similar pull there, Dratnos. I'm not sure if you remember, but did prevent all those Sons of Car from actually spawning there. So maybe it's just a question of, like, priority damage, for example, it comes into it. I mean, we've seen a number of times where there's been just communication issues when it comes to kicks, so maybe damage could be another factor.
Yeah, it can be. Sometimes you only have enough CC effect to keep them from transforming for, say, 16 seconds, right? And so if they're not dead by the end of that, maybe you're in trouble. Or maybe it's a case of, you know, okay, somebody didn't kick the hex, and so whoever was supposed to do the stun was hexed, something like that. There's a long sort of chain of things that all needs to go right in pulls like that in the other side. Mists as well, a high technical damage-oriented dungeon as well. Several of these boss fights you can shave minutes off of if you can deal like 10% more damage during the crucial moments.
Yeah, no question here, as this is going to be our decider match between Sheesh and Evolving. One team is going to be going home after this. The next one is going to move on to play against Team Name for the right to qualify for our global finals later this year. Let's see what they all have in store for us right now. Sheesh and Evolving going head-to-head here in Mr. Tiernacythe.
All right, so let's take a look at that one. One thing that is going to be incredibly important for those two teams is how many offensive cooldowns can they save on that first pull to be able to commit it to the first boss, to be able to get that one phase. We've seen Perplex do it, we've seen Team Name do it, and now we also want to see Sheesh and Evolving do it. And very interesting comp by Sheesh, as they're running a Brewmaster, Resto Shaman, a DPS Warrior,
Arcane?
Affliction Warlock, and an Arcane Mage. Okay, this is it looks like, unfortunately, we did get a false start, so we might have to actually redo this.
I
We're
bet
gonna
none
get
of the-
word of production in a second, but this comp is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see like what they have planned here. I don't know if they just maybe haven't practiced this dungeon and went, right, let's just go on all of our mains. I mean, I don't know if Nezro is a warrior main. I don't think Wildy's an arcane mage main particularly, but I'm interested to see what their game plan is here. But yeah, I don't know if there's like a full start on the side of Sheesh. We'll have to see. Maybe this is part of their strat, right? They're like giving evolving an advantage or something. So we'll see what ends up playing out here. I thought for a second that one of them had forgotten to go Night Fae or something, and so like in fact, actually, I don't think any of them are Night Fae. Oh no, they do have a Night Fae. I thought they like weren't able to open the gate or something. Yeah.
Actually, I'm not really sure. I actually want to check a little bit while we are waiting for, getting an answer to the issue that they're having right now. I actually want to check a little bit what they're running, because of course this comp is something we've never seen this before, and it looks incredibly interesting. So I really wonder what exactly their plan is with this one. The Arcane Mage makes sense in my mind, because I would assume they're trying to do that one phase, because Arcane does have a huge amount of burst for specifically Ingra. So I think that makes sense. But then the warrior is really interesting, because warrior, you would think they're playing a warrior for like the buff, right? They have the AP buff, but they're playing two range DPS that do magic damage, right? So at that point I wonder, that it's not for the damage buff, so what is it for exactly? Warrior does have really good few target cleave though. That is something that you have to look at as well, right? He's playing Arms Warrior, and when you go through the maze, you have a bunch of like smaller pulls. You can pull some stuff through the walls to make them bigger, but even then you have a bunch of like smaller pulls that Warriors are really good for. So this might be the first time in a long time that we see Warrior DPS in the MDI.
Yeah, and just a bit of an update for you guys, as we did have some technical issues for one of the players, so it's going to be just a quick remake so that we can get everybody then in together, starting up at the same time, so it should be just a second. But like you said, pretty cool to start seeing some different group compositions there, Sai.
Yeah, it's just really nice to see, because even for us as the casters, it's a little bit of a curveball, and you have to suddenly switch brains and go, right, why are we seeing this? We haven't seen it so far in the competition, so you have to kind of think a few steps ahead for the teams and figure out what their exact game plan might be. But I'm interested to see how much they're committing to this one phase on Ingra compared to the whole rest of the dungeon, and how they're going to be limiting themselves on one hand to then gain advantages elsewhere. So really cool comp from Sheesh. Again, I don't know if it's just because they haven't practiced this dungeon massively, and maybe they're just going for like an off-the-wall pick and they're just going out with a bang, or maybe they're actually got something constructed here. I don't know. Dratnos probably has the best thing to say in terms of... Oh yeah, go on, Nigger.
So I just quickly wanted to say that I was thinking about that too, because Andy Brew is a Brewmaster main, Fanner is a Resto Shaman main, but then why would they go with like the Arcane Mage, right? Because Splat also mains Warlock. So what do you think about this one, Dratnos?
I do think that, so to some extent, I think seeing stuff like the Brewmaster is likely to be comfort, although Brewmaster is intensely high single target damage. And then also, the Arms Warrior is really, really, really good for that burst window on both bosses, actually, both the first and the second boss. When you're playing Kyrian Arms, which they were, that is an incredible amount of damage, especially with the Kyrian Legendary in like an 8-10 second window, which is exactly what you're looking for on those two fights. So I think there's a really good shot that this is some amount of like, we've calculated some of these picks and some amount of like, we like these specs between the different players. Yeah.
I wanted to add as well.
Go for it.
Oh, if it's, I was going to say as well, Thana with the Kyrian Resto Shaman is really strong. He's going to be doing a lot of damage consistently with that Vesper Totem. He's going to pop off. I'm calling it. But yeah, sorry,
isn't
Jack, go ahead.
Ashen better for...
Ashen is better,
it seems like... Yeah, right? Because it seems like some of the classes are really good for the first boss, but then they play the Resto Shaman when Ashen Hollow is obviously like really good for that first boss, but maybe they're playing it for the pet to be able to pull stuff through the wall, but then they have their Warlock who could do that anyway. I don't know. It seems really interesting.
Normally I would say yes, but it's thinner on the Resto Shaman, and I played with him in a Miss a Ton of Scythe with the Kyrian Resto Shaman. I'm telling you right now, he's gonna pop off. I don't care about Ashen Hallow. He's gonna prove us all wrong, okay? Trust me.
I think that's one of the questions, though, is like when you get into this tournament, yeah, there's going to be people who are mains at certain specs who are extremely well practiced at them and everything like that. But when you get into something like MDI in particular, that starts stressing and demanding more of these players to play something that's going to be the most optimal spec for what you're going for. And especially when it's something in particular like Mist's first boss and everything like that, you can pretty quickly get into the flow of, okay, how am I going to deal the most damage to this boss and get as close as we can to one phasing? Because the skill of somebody on that spec will go really far. It can take you extremely far. But MDI, when you're going up against some of the best teams in the world, I mean, we haven't seen that many Resto Shamans here, Dratnos, because, and it's really just for a reason with H-Pally.
Yeah, I mean, Holy Paladin is dealing a unique amount of damage at this point. It is true, though, that Vesper Totem is up there as well. That's a shorter cooldown as also, so maybe with the way that all lines up, you're also getting good Vesper Totems on, Mistcaller, right, the second boss. Maybe across the length of the dungeon, you're doing better as a result of that. Maybe the Arms Warrior Arcane Mage burst is sufficient that you actually don't even need it from your healer as well as much, right? You can sacrifice, say, 20% of the healer's DPS to get that pick that's more favorable for the rest of the dungeon. I don't know. I'm very curious to see exactly what that first boss looks like out of both of these teams.
Yeah, well, we had a false start and everything like that, so we're just making sure we have the remake, and thankfully, just at the start of the game for it, so we'll be getting back into it. Again, this is game number 3 between Sheesh and Evolving in our lower semi-finals here, with the winner going to go to the lower finals. And this will be determining, of course, who is going to be facing off against Team Name for the chance to qualify. All right, game number 3 with Miss Eterna Scythe. It starts right now. Let's see what they got for us.
Okay, I'm actually so glad that we had this quick remake here, because then we actually can take a second to talk about that composition, and now we can focus on the game, because this is an incredibly important dungeons for both of these two teams. Whichever team wins here is going to stay in the tournament and have a shot at that top 2 spot to be able to qualify for the global final, while the losing team from this dungeon is going to be out of the tournament, and their only chance to qualify for the global finals is going to be that last chance tournament that is going to be happening after the group stages are over. And now we're gonna see what exactly Sheesh's plan is with this composition as they're running through this first area, and Evolving, though, already doing that pull with their Tormentor as well.
Yeah, Evolving were a little bit quicker with getting to this pack. Both Sheesh and Evolving opted for that Shroud to get them here to Arcalath first, so that they can pull in a bunch of trash onto this Tormented mob that they desperately want to deal with, and that's going to give them their DPS anima power as well. No team is gonna commit the Bloodlust. They want to hold that for the first boss and try in one phase. I'm hoping that they're going to try for the one phase, because I think both of their team comps are capable. We've seen it happen on the side of Evolving with a similar composition from previous teams, and then Sheesh as well with this wild comp here. We should see some real good boss damage, but Evolving, they're having a few troubles finishing off these Battle Breakers here. Few members of the team dropping very, very low, but they managed to stabilize now. Everyone's getting topped off, and they should be able to resume the dungeon. And yeah, I mean, are we going to see either team look to pull any more of the Tormented bombs before they go on to the boss, do you think, Digger, or are they just going to stick with the one?
I'm pretty sure they're just going to stick to the one. The one thing I want to note about Evolving is that we've seen them before do this dungeon, but they did not one-phase Ingra. But then we saw Perplexed and Team Name one-phase the boss with the same comp. They were running the exact same physical comp, and now Evolving is trying to adjust their strategy to also get that one phase done, because we saw Aisha not actually committing that Ashen Hollow on that previous pull, which is something they did before. They committed their Ashen because they assumed they're gonna have to two-phase Ingra anyway, so they didn't have that cooldown for the boss. But now they were holding on to it, and you can see it looks like they're cleaving Ingra a bit more. They need to get Ingra a bit lower before the Droman gets to 20% to be able to get that one phase. Sheesh, on the other hand, though, I mean, I hate to say it, but it almost looks like they haven't practiced this dungeon. Like, I hate to say this, but they just pulled those two, like, high HP mobs by itself, which seems like something like we have not seen any other team do that. We've seen all other teams actually pull those 2 mobs on top of the previous, but then at the same time, I'm wondering if that's something they have to do because of their comp. Maybe because they just don't have the damage to deal with this trash because they have to hold on to their cooldowns for Ingra. Now we're gonna take a look at Evolving as they get the Drone to 20%, and then we're gonna see if either of those teams manages to one-face this boss.
Yeah, this is going to be hang on to your seats here, chat. I don't know if that's a saying, but I'm going for it. They're blasting through Ingra now, 60%, 50%. They want to try and get sub, like 30, 40% here, and they're easily going to be doing this. So this is going to be a one-phase on the side of Evolving, and they are now taking the lead against Sheesh here, who are just about to get Droman down to that they've just killed Dromaness, and now they're on Ingra, they're popping the Bloodlust, and now it's their turn to try and one-phase this boss. They have to one-phase to be able to stay in this race with Evolving here, and Ingra's just barely trickling down this last couple of percent. I think they are going to be able to finish it off and not have to kill Droman once again, but
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really, really close if they're able to do it at all. And I'm surprised, with the Arcane Mage, you'd be expecting them to really be able to blast through Ingra here. That's what you brought the Arcane Mage to this key for, and they haven't been able to do it as convincingly.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that is weird, right? First, they pulled these 2 mobs by themselves. Then they popped their Bloodlust after the Droman was on 20%. If you are planning on one-facing this boss, then why would you delay your Bloodlust for the face? Then you would just pop it earlier to not waste uptime, right? Because otherwise, if you kill the boss as soon as the phase starts, then you're gonna waste like 20 seconds of your lust. So that's also weird. So they must have not intended on one-facing this boss. Otherwise, there's no reason to delay that last. And at this point, they're trying to finish off Ingra anyway. But yeah, it just took them so long. Evolving is already done as they're moving on to that maze area. They dealt with the second Tormentor. Sheesh just has to catch up in somehow. Maybe there's something incredibly fancy that they're going to be doing later on that I just am not thinking about. But this comp they're running, it's not for one-facing the boss. That is pretty clear at this point. There must be some other thing that they're going for, or it really is just the fact that they didn't put a lot of practice into this dungeon, considering that this dungeon is literally like nowhere in their path of this tournament.
I think
right?
it's the 6th dungeon that they would have had to practice. Yeah, this is the 6th dungeon that they've had to play in this tournament. And at a certain point, you're running on empty. There's a point where you go, hey, I don't think we're going to see a miss for a long time. Do we even bother practicing it? And now they're really in a delicate position here on the side of Sheesh with Vareth there with that healing reduction, making this pack an absolute nightmare for Sheesh, but they are going to stabilize, and Vareth almost dead there, so they're going to be able to stabilize a bit there. But Evolving, now they're comfortably moving on through this dungeon. They're 20% trash ahead of Sheesh, and they're just blitzing on through this. They're probably going to be looking to pull additional mobs through the dungeon. You can see Vossi here trying to get his pet in a position to do so, but then he looks to get the dismiss there. So they managed to pull those additional mobs. This is a nice, cute way of being more efficient with the maze. Because the maze, you are restricted to how quickly you can move through it, the maze itself. At least if you can pull in additional trash packs, then when you are committing big cooldowns, then at least you're getting value for, the cooldowns that you're committing. So that's what we're seeing on the side of Evolving.
Yeah, and let's hope they don't make a mistake with that maze, because of course in Season 2 of the MDI, the maze actually is going to be random, so they don't know which path they're going to be getting as they enter the dungeon, but both of the teams are getting the same maze. So they still have to figure out where to go. They probably are going to have that healer run around, put those markers down. And we've already seen like 2 or even 3 teams mess that up and get teleported all the way back. That is not something you want to see before. As Evolving is now dealing with that matriarch and pulled a bunch of trash on top for that efficiency. That's why you see those hunters, right? You have the hunter, you have the warlock on the other side with those pets, making sure they can get all of that trash pulled through those walls by using the clever pet mechanic that the pets, they just don't care about the walls, right? They can just walk through and get that extra trash, and it looks like they're up to 47%, 53, sorry, already on Evolving side.
Especially as well when you're a marksmanship hunter, if your pet dies, you're actually glad because then you haven't had to stop and dismiss it. So you're kind of hoping that your little gorilla there goes in and dies. But Vossi actually being really smart with getting that dismissed pet pre-cast. He's actually hard metagaming on this maze with his pet, so he's prolonging the life that's going to have and making these pulls even extra efficient in terms of time, not having to rest pet each individual time they want to pull through the maze. But then, interestingly as well, Alex, the tank on the side of Evolving, is still running the Codex Trinket that allows him to cause this like reflecting damage, which will allow you to pull mobs through the wall because you can direct that reflected damage at mobs that you're targeting. So Alex can help pull mobs through the wall as well, and maybe there's just kind of, if everyone's able to do it, or if at least a couple people are able to do it, then it means that they can be more time efficient, not having to wait for a pet AI to like run through slowly. As you know, that little gorilla, not known for being very fast animals, they probably taking their sweet time to get there. So just being efficient on the side of Evolving, having multiple options there for that. And now we're going to see this big pull in Nagura from Evolving, pulling in packs of trash onto Mistcaller here. Shella there on the sub-rogue is going to be able to funnel a lot of this damage into the boss. And then also hoping that Soda isn't just going to steal all of that juicy AoE as well. So maybe there's going to be some communication from Shella here. And Vossi's just taking it, I think.
Yeah, Moose is just popping that true shot here, doing a huge amount of AoE damage as they're trying to get this trash down as fast as possible, while also cleaving onto Mistcaller. I do think they want to get the trash down before they go into the Mistcaller intermission phase, just because there's so much AoE damage coming out of that phase on Tyrannical, and if you have like extra damage from enraged mobs, trash mobs, that can be dangerous. So I do think they wanted to get that done, but they do it perfectly as they now triggered that 70% phase. Everyone seems to be healthy as they get that. I don't think we've ever seen a team do the incorrect clone. That is something that we still have to see.
That would be nasty.
Yeah, you don't want to see that. As Sheesh is now also on Mistcaller. They did manage to catch up a little bit in the dungeon, where they are in the dungeon. But if you look at the percentage, you can see they're quite a bit behind in trash. So they have to make up for that later on in the last boss area, probably.
Yeah, the thing with Sheesh is they don't have as easy a way to pull this trash through the walls because, I mean, they have Splat who can be summoning a pet every time, but I think it's a little bit slower than doing it on the Hunter, and Andy isn't using that Codex Trinket to be able to pull through the wall, so it is solely dependent on Splat, or perhaps Thana if he's going to pop an Elemental, which, again, is cooldown based, so they have to hope that Thana has that cooldown available each time, so they're probably just a little bit less efficient. But we could then see Sheesh do some really big pulls moving on after Mistcaller, and make up for that 18% trash deficit that they're currently sitting on. But Evolving now, they've only got 20% left on Mistcaller on this Tyrannical setting, and that they're going to be moving on with the dungeon secure in their lead currently. Which, I mean, Nagura, I'm going to be so sad to see either one of these teams go, because they've both been super impressive across the course of the weekend, and really entertaining. They've had some really good moments in these dungeons. They've had some kind of questionable moments in some of these dungeons as well, and it's just ultimately been really enjoyable to watch both these teams. And one of them's going to have to go to that last stand bracket. Hopefully they choose to do that, and we might be able to see them later on in the coming weeks of the MDI. But yeah, this has been a great series to watch so far, a really eventful one in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to note about Sheesh, though, is they already did like the Great Push, which was also this single event that we saw, and they did incredibly well there.
Yeah.
They were the only team who got a 26 DOS, for example. So I would think that if if they are deciding to compete for that last stand tournament, they obviously have a really good chance of doing well in that tournament, in this one-off. Of course, only one team is going to make it out of that, but I do think Sheesh, if they decide to compete, are going to be doing well. But yeah, I totally agree with you that both of those teams are just performing so well. They come up with all of these strategies. They're just so creative with their compositions as well. And seeing Sheesh just, especially Thanner, just being happy throughout this series, even though there's so much on the line, and obviously there must be a lot of pressure on them. And then he falls off, and they're still just laughing and having fun. That is good to see. But yeah, it definitely looks like Evolving is in the driver's seat in this dungeon, as they're 20% trash ahead, and they're already on their way to the last boss. And what a performance here by Evolving. I mean, this mist run has been so good, so flawless by them.
Yeah, this has been really, really good. I'm even gonna try and check during the course of this dungeon what their Mists of Turner Scythe runtime was previously on the side of Evolving. I think they went up against a Perplexed, who did a 15:06 run. So Evolving weren't able to actually finish their run, but they were still on track for a very solid-looking time. And they might even be on track to beat it, because they're at 13 minutes 06 right now, and they've just begun Tradova here. So they could be on track to beat their previous time here. So really, really good run from Evolving. They clearly know that they've got everything to play for here, and they are putting that to the test and just executing a highly, highly skilled Mists of Turner Scythe here.
Yeah, they clearly improved their strategy still. Considering that Mist is the third game in the series, which might mean that they don't even have to play it, and in the next two series that we're still going to have in this tournament, there's no Mist at all. So seeing that Evolving even improved upon their old strat that they had when they ran the two dungeons before, they changed the way they use their cooldowns, managed to one-phase Ingra, shaving off even more time of their already pretty good run in Mists. So really impressive seeing them put more time into this, considering how unlikely it even is that they played at all in the rest of this tournament. So good to see Evolving putting in so much practice and figuring out all of these strategies and adapting as well to other team strategies if they see that there's anything that they're doing a lot slower.
Yeah, and if we are to believe that Sheesh may be losing this match here, if Evolving, they've only got 40% left on Tradova, and then they've got a few trash percent, Sheesh are going to have to be careful, because if they do go to that last stand tournament, that last stand bracket, then they probably have to go up against Echo there, because ultimately Echo probably will go to that last stand and probably lose their bracket, because they've got Now playing on that Holy Paladin, so they've got to, put up with him doing that. So, hope he's still in the chat and he's heard that one. But no, Evolving here, they've got 20% left on Tradova. They are comfortably dealing with this boss, and then they're going to be pulling that last couple percent of trash. They dealt with this boss with 2 Tormented Affixes working against them, and they've still been able to execute it very, very comfortably. They were almost on track to, I think, replicate... What did I say? Was it Perplex Mists of Turner Scythe time? Yeah, 15:06 was Perplex time, and now Evolving have got around about a 15:30 or so by the time they will have killed this trash as well. So really, really nice from Evolving. They are just getting better and better and better in this competition. Evolving are ramping, and they are ramping into the next section of the bracket, into that lower finals.
Yeah, they just need to get the last 4% from this last trash pool that they're just engaged with now, so they should be done in just a second. And it's going to be Evolving, the lower-seeded team, winning this series against Sheesh. Sheesh, unfortunately, going to be disqualified out of this tournament, basically, and Evolving is going to be the one moving on as they win this Mists.
Defeated, and Evolving is going to be moving on to go up against Team Name in our lower finals there. The upset coming up on the hand of Evolving.